In this lecture, we will learn what tuples are and how to work with them in Python. A tuple, like a list, is an ordered collection. However, unlike lists, tuples are unchangeable. This means that once we create a tuple, we cannot change or modify it. Remember how lists used square brackets and separated their values by commas? Tuples are similar, but use parentheses instead of square brackets. As a basic example for creating a tuple in Python, we can create a variable named collection and set it equal to a tuple with the values 1, 2, and 3. Indexing with tuples works the same way as it did for lists. For example, we can print out collection at index 0 and run the code, and you will notice that 1 was printed to the console. Negative indexing is also the same. If we print out the result of collection at index -1 and run the code, you will notice that 3 was printed to the console. Please note that tuples are immutable or unchangeable. We cannot use indexing to set an element in a tuple to a new value. For example, attempting to change the element at index 0 to 4 and then running the code will result in an error. The specific error is a type error, informing us that the tuple object does not support item assignment. However, there is a workaround for changing values in tuples. Basically, we convert the tuple to a list, change the value, and then convert it back to a tuple. The first step is to create another variable and convert our tuple to a list. I will create a variable named collection2 and set it equal to collection converted to a list. Then we change the value that we want to change. In this case, I will change the element at index 0 to 4. Then we set our original collection variable equal to collection2, converted back to a tuple. And finally, we print out the collection to the console to see the result. When we run the code, you will notice that the first element of our tuple is now a 4 instead of a 1, proving that our code works. Please note that since tuples cannot be changed, we cannot add items to a tuple. This will raise an error and is invalid in Python code. To loop over the elements in a tuple, we can use a for loop. For example, we will say for I in collection, and inside of the for loop we will print I. When we run the code, you will notice that each of the elements was printed to the console as a result of the for loop. To check if an item exists in the tuple, we can use the in keyword. For example, if 2 is in the tuple, we will print 2 is in tuple to the console. When we run the code, you will notice that 2 is in fact in the collection, since the statement was output to the console. We can join two tuples together using the plus operator. For this example, we will create a variable named collection2 and assign it a tuple with the values 4, 5, and 6. Then we will use Python's print function and pass in collection plus collection2. When we run the code, you will notice two tuples were joined together into one big tuple. To count how many times an element occurs in the tuple, we can use the count function. For example, we will print out the result of collection.count and pass 1 into the count function to count the number of times that 1 occurs in the tuple. When we run the code, you will notice that 1 was printed since the element 1 occurs once in our tuple. The index function will return the position of the specified value in our tuple. For example, we can print out the result of collection.index and pass in 1 to the index function to obtain the index of element 1 in our tuple. When we run the code, you will notice that 0 was printed since the index of element 1 in our tuple is 0. In the next lecture, we will learn what dictionaries are and how to work with them in Python.